Hey everybody, so today in the garage we're going to do something that might not be that interesting to many of you, but we're going to talk about installing an aftermarket radio. And it's a subject that I don't love because I do like the way the factory radios look. And for some of you, I'm actually going to post some details or a link to some details. There's actually a member of the community that's been doing a little work on these radios with regard to adding Bluetooth functionality to them. So we'll talk about that again in the future episode as well. But if you are a member of the S-CAR Preservation Society, I'm going to see if I can find the link to the discussion on that, and you can kind of check that out. But I'm full aftermarket. Both of my cars are actually wired for standalone aftermarket systems. So meaning I've left all of the stock wiring and harnesses intact, but I've wired new wires alongside those so that I could, in theory, pull that all out and just revert back to a stock system, which I think is the way to go. I'm not a fan of necessarily, other than an adapter harness for certain things, but we'll see today. We're going to actually tackle the Kenwood system that is currently in this Pearl car. I'm going to switch that out. The Kenwood head unit is going to get switched out for an Alpine unit, and I will show you specifically the trick. You need to actually hook up both antennas. If you don't do this, you will have terrible reception. So I'm going to try to come up with a parts list for you as well, because in the past I've had a little bit of trouble finding some of this stuff, so I'm going to try to detail that out as best I can within the description and show you how all of that looks. So let's get started. So this is the current Kenwood unit that is in the car, and it works, but I've got an issue with this has an HD tuner. And I actually had it out. I can't remember what I was doing. I had it out for some reason. When I put it back in, I actually screwed up one of the antenna leads, I believe. So I don't get that great of reception. Not that I listen to a whole lot of radio, but I actually play off of this USB thumb drive there. And this was actually a refurbished unit off of eBay, and I think it was all of $80. So it's not exactly what you'd call a high-end unit, but the trouble I have is a lot of times I'll now turn the unit on and it won't play music. Of course, now it does. The one time I want to do a demo of it not working, it works. So I basically have to shut it off and then restart it again, and then it will work. So anyhow, this one is going to go away, and in its place, we're going to set up this Alpine. So let's get started. First step, disconnect your negative battery lead. Oh, and before I actually remove the battery lead, I should comment that the speakers in the system, I'm actually using the stock Bose enclosure, but I have all MB quart, so the lowers have MB quarts in them. You can maybe see better here in the stock enclosures. So I think it's a 5 1/4 inch, and then the top, I actually, by default, these don't have speakers in them, and so there's a little rubber gasket. You can actually cut that out and then custom mount a tweeter in there. So I actually have true component speakers in the fronts, and then the standard MB quart 6x9s in the rear, and then a good size 4-channel amp that's hanging under the rear deck. Again, just wired dedicated power leads off of the battery, which is under the rear seat passenger side here. And I believe I've got an adapter harness on this one. So I had actually bought this head unit to go in my Avant because the factory head unit in that car was really bad, had really bad feedback hum. There was some sort of grounding issue, and so I was using these isolators. So as I mentioned, I was using these ground loop isolators. This is similar. I'll have to see. I don't even remember what I have in the white car at this point. So I'll see if I happen to have a different style there, but as I'm digging through my junk, I'm not seeing the one I thought I had. This is the antenna setup. So it has a blue line to actually kick on your power antenna. And if you can see that, Audi VW. We're gonna dig into this one and see, because I do have to replace my amp because I know I screwed up one of the wires on that. So we'll dig into that here and I'll rejoin you on the next clip here. Okay, so I'm gonna slide this out, maybe. Wow, that's a incredibly snug fit for some reason. All right, so now I just have to unhook the stuff on the back, which I can't get my camera in there to show you, but give me a second. Okay, welcome back to some ridiculousness here. In order to make this work, if you really care about radio, which I don't know many people that do anymore, but you'll see I have, this is the inline amp for the antenna, so powered antenna. And it is connected. That is my antenna connector back there. You can just faintly see it, I think. It actually does have two. There you can see a little bit of that white ring. That's the other connector. So this blue line needs to connect to your remote on, like for your amp triggers. And I've got this other line. This is actually going back to my amplifier. So I have this line going to the rear of the car to the amp, this one going to my powered antenna, and then there's another line that's going to my harness from the stereo head unit. Well, to hook both of those antennas up, so you have one powered antenna, which is the triggered one, right there on the bottom, and the other one up there, I need to also connect. So in order to do that, I need one of these beautiful little connectors. But I need a way to hook both of these up into the back of my stereo. So I do that with this little Y adapter here. So this plugs into the back of the stereo. One side of this goes into my amp right here, into the powered amp side. The other side, actually, because it's that type of connector, I need to take this, slide it into the end of that, like so, and then that can plug into the other side of that antenna connector. And then you've got to figure out a way to secure all of this crud and get it out of the way. And I end up usually tucking it down on the side, on this side. But that alone is going to be probably your biggest battle, is to get all of this excess crud out of the way and tucked back down on one side or the other, because there's a wiring harness in there that's going to interfere. There's a decent amount of room on the left, but of course that antenna wants to kind of sit over there. So that is the next challenge. And of course these RCAs are my rear channel, front channel, and sub feeds. So we have all that. I have to get this new amp in here, which of course this is good, another 2 inches longer than what's in there already, which is not helping my scenario one bit, but that's what I'm going to do right now. I don't have any place good to put the camera while I do this, but hopefully that explanation kind of explains how all of this convoluted mess gets connected and eventually plugged into the back of the stereo so that you have both of your antennas hooked up. There's probably there may be a more elegant way of doing this. I was just grabbing what I could find off the shelf type of stuff to make it happen. But yeah, if you could make your own line that's short and custom, that would be ideal. But today, I don't have that kind of free time. I just need to swap this thing, get the new radio in there, and get it up and running. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, here you can see my nice mess of wires, but I have the harness for the new Alpine, and the yellow and red go to the red here for the power, And you've got the blue basically coming out of the harness, which is your amp trigger. That is going back to my amp trigger there, and another line from blue going to the actual powered amp component on the antenna adapter. I have the other lead of the antenna adapter plugged in here, as I mentioned, and then I just sort of loop this harness back around. I'll probably get a zip tie and tie it tighter so that I can tuck it into the side, and then this is what plugs into the back of the radio. So all I need to do is, and I say this jokingly, all I need to do is put all these wires back and then reconnect my RCAs for my amps and plug that and that in. So 3 pairs of RCAs, those 2, and just tuck it in and we're done. Now, I say that, but I'm going to maybe run a timer here and see how many hours it takes me to get all these wires tucked nicely in. And that's one advantage. Unfortunately, this head unit that I have still has a CD player in it, which is not really necessary. But if you have the digital only, so it's just the short case, then that'd be ideal, because you have far more room back here. Like you know, this radio would only be that long. So instead of all this extra stuff that I have to try to fit in here with all these cables. So that's where we're at, and fingers crossed I can get this back in there. So the radio is in and functional. It's actually not fully seated. It needs to go in just a little bit further, but it is up and running. I'm not sure. I haven't quite figured out if I have multiple colors for this display. I know I can custom set these, but it's a little weird to have blue and orange. And I can actually get you can fully customize the color on this, so I can fully match it to the climate control, which is nice. But I still hate the way the faces stick out on these. Like, that's the nice thing about the factory radios. It's such a nice, you know, flat, clean look, and these, even when it's fully in, it still sticks out a substantial amount. So I don't love that. So I don't know. We'll see. This may be for now, but I actually have a Continental brand unit that I'm going to be installing in a 911 here soon, and we'll see how that one functions, if I like that better, because I think that would be a good kind of OEM look, but I can't recall if that one has pre-outs. I don't think it does, and so I wish there was a decent stereo that, you know, still had pre-outs and it was a nice kind of classic proper look, you know. And I know Blaupunkt has a version, but from what I've seen on that, it's a little clunky. The user interface isn't great, and people say it's, you know, probably twice the price of what it should be for the build quality, and that wouldn't surprise me. I have had a couple of Blaupunkt units in the past, and they were all pretty chintzy. So we shall see, but at least the kind of possessed Kenwood is out of here and the Alpine is in. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I will try to link to everything that I used in the install process here as well. So if you're trying to install an aftermarket system of your own, hopefully make it reasonably simple. And like I said, I'm not fully integrating into the stock system. I'm not using the stock amp in this setup. I'm using my own, you know, all the speakers are aftermarket. The amp is, I can't even remember what kind of amp I have. MB Quart actually as well. So MB Quart speakers and amp, all wired independently. And yeah, so that to me, that way, because the only wires that I've tapped into would be power and ground, and like the amp, remote on, etc., I've run from the back of the car. So that way you do the least possible damage to the stock harness. And actually, you know what, I think I did actually just unplug the stock harness. It's in there. I did run my own power and grounds as well, come to think of it. So I didn't even tap into that. I just ran them straight off the battery, and yeah, make it simple. That way you don't butcher anything in the stock setup. Same with the stock speakers. They all have the stock connectors still tucked into the housings. So if anyone wanted to convert this back to completely stock, it wouldn't be a big deal at all. You could just pull out the aftermarket wires and there you go. Anyhow, thank you for watching, and we will see you again next time. Cheers.